I've looked at the eShop today. I looked at the Switch 2's updated sales numbers, and you've seen some interesting little tidbits there. Fantasy Life 2 has crawled up to number three. Meaning that third-party games are selling extraordinarily well on Switch 2. Cyberpunk's on there. Fantasy Life is on there. Street Fighter 6 is on there. So the entire narrative that like third-party games aren't selling on Switch 2 is completely debunked, right? That's something I do have to emphasize, going into this because I do think this is going to be the big giga like cope in regards to this situation is that like, well, third parties don't sell on Switch anyway. They do. Like, and again, that's been demonstrated at this point. Anybody who says otherwise is lying to you. But like, what is interesting about this console, was one of like the weird decisions that they made. Like the absolute worst announcement that they made at the Nintendo Direct for the Switch 2 reveal, right? Where they showed off all the games. They did some Undertale thing. They announced that like chapters 3 and 4 would be coming to Switch 2. It would be like $25. Like this was like a complete nothing burger of an announcement, right? Like nobody cared. Okay, like I noted when this happened that like Deltarune was mogged by like a 3 second clip of a Silk Song, if that tells you anything about how relevant Undertale is in 2025, right? It was just this blatant attempt by Toby Fox to get some kind of attention or like notoriety from like the Switch 2 announcement. Like, oh man, look at me. I'm in the Switch 2 Direct. Like, yeah, alongside a bunch of other indie devs. Like it's crazy, the way that like Fox has tried to like meme himself into relevancy. Like I'm half convinced at this point the reason he made Deltarune episodic was purely so he could like talk about it in every single Nintendo Direct. Like keep in mind, like Deltarune, like I think the first two episodes of it are completely free. So like he's done free announcements of games on Nintendo Directs, giving them away for free so he can announce them on Nintendo Directs to try to get people to talk about them, to try to get people to care. And every single time, he has been blatantly ignored. Like nobody cares. Deltarune was like the least relevant new announcement at the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct because it's not really a new announcement, right? Nobody cares. So it's become apparent to me that the real reason Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4 were taking so long was that Fox specifically wanted a day one Nintendo Switch 2 release. He thought this would be some big thing for him, that this would be some huge opportunity, that he'd be able to leech out the day one things. Because he probably knows that like third parties deliberately ignore Nintendo Switch 2, so he's just like, okay, I'm gonna release my game and I'm gonna be like this huge deal on Switch 2. I'm gonna be like I'm gonna be the guy, like he really thought this would be some big like career move for him, is just announcing a day one release on Nintendo Switch 2. Okay, so if Deltarune comes out, what happens? Nobody cares. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's playing about it. It is a complete meme game. The only people supporting Deltarune are the same terminally online weirdos that were fans of Toby before Undertale even came out. And that's just the reality of like this specific game, right? There is a reason you don't see Deltarune or Undertale like brought up in actual gaming discussions, right? It is entirely a homestuck phenomenon. It is entirely a meme game for this bizarre internet audience that really has nothing to do with games, right? So you have like a handful of people who are obsessed with Toby and make all these like insane like fanfic theories about how it's so deep and like amazing, but these are like streamers, these are YouTubers, these are people who like watch streams and YouTube videos, right? Who write like crazy, like again, like to them, Fox like panders to their culture and their ideology. Like they are like a very fringe group of internet weirdos that don't really play video games or care about them at all. Like what they care about is their guy, Toby Fox, being seen as like some RTOR game dev. That's like the primary appeal of Undertale is this idea that like some internet weirdo like themselves could find any kind of success in the industry, right? So they like, so they so Deltarune comes out. It makes the bestseller list, right? It's like number 5 or something. And this week, a couple of weeks later, it dropped down to number 7. So for the record, like Fantasy Life 2 is getting more support. Fantasy Life 2 is that's getting more popular. Fast Fusion, that's becoming more popular. Like you're seeing like shifts in the market. You're seeing people buy new games. You're seeing like changes. Deltarune is becoming less popular because the reality is everyone who was obsessed about Deltarune bought it day one, and now there's just no audience anymore. There is no organic like uh, following for Deltarune. You get me? Like nobody is like looking at the games on Nintendo Switch 2, picking out Deltarune out of a hat and deciding like to try it and to play it. Like absolutely nobody is doing that because Deltarune at its core is simply not an appealing video game to anybody. It's plagiarized. It has like lazy visuals. It's not funny. Like there's just nothing about it that's worth playing in any way, shape, or form. And that was true for the original Undertale as well. But like the giant cope, was like, all this superficial nonsense. Like, oh, Toby Fox made it by himself, which isn't true, by the way. But like, uh, yeah, clearly, Toby Fox's big play, making the game episodic, promoting it in like every Nintendo Direct, like having it be brought up in every single like announcement he possibly could, getting as many crossover deals as he can, like working on Pokemon, trying to present himself as like some great like indie game developer, some huge hit in Japan, and like this is the end result. He hasn't expanded his fan base outside of his aging millennial audience. And that is going to be a very, very interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting to see like what happens when these people fall off because like Fox feels to me he feels like someone who pursued fame as opposed or notoriety as opposed to someone who's like an actual creator, someone who actually wants to produce good games, like because that's always been like the focus of his fan base is that like, oh, he met this guy, did this, he's living in Japan, and like the reality is like, well, is he actually making video games? And the answer is no. The past 10 years, this was his big play. This is what he was been building up to. This is what he's done. This is what like the end result of like the Toby Fox saga is just a day one Switch 2 release that nobody really cares about. Like it's. I imagine by July you're not going to see like Deltarune on the bestsellers list ever again. It's just completely done. Like this is going to be the end of Toby Fox's relevancy. Like the instant he moves away from Undertale, everything he does won't be recognized. Anything he does won't be recognizable, and his audience won't care for it. Like it's inevitable at this point that he just kind of falls off and becomes obsolete and irrelevant. And yeah, I couldn't be happier. Like this is Undertale is by far the worst thing to ever happen to video games, like indie games specifically. It is like my go-to example as like everything that's wrong with this industry, how it's more about like being noticed and having like a pre-established like community than like actually producing good games. It's like a shining example of just how like fraudulent hacks can find success based on like you know on these like weird preconceived notions by like their communities. It was embarrassing, seeing the situation kind of fall apart over the years. But like This isn't going to result in some glorious like Toby Fox revolution, you know. This isn't some like huge game buster thing. Deltarune sold a lot of units day one because Toby Fox's followers desperately wanted to see it succeed, but the reality is it was always going to be buried by the video games that genuine gamers wanted to play.